Okay. Live stream's on? Check, check. Okay, very good. Thank you, live stream people, for being patient. It's always very encouraging to have such a full group of servants physically present. 40 minutes later, they text me and they say, everyone is their live stream. And like they're watching from 7 o'clock. I'm like, I don't know. I'm not the one who turns it on. So hopefully they're still there, or they're going to have to catch the recording later. This is all our own live stream, I'm sure. So today we have a great attendance of 2. We're coming in together. We're going to assume there's hosts of servants live streaming with us. Okay. Have you been following the last few sessions? We've been talking about the covenants in the Old Testament, right? Okay. In the name of the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit, one God, amen. We've been talking about the different covenants in the Old Testament. We've talked about the covenants as being a promise and a commitment between God and humanity. And we said that there are 4 covenants. Do you remember which ones they were? First one is Noah. Second one is Abraham. Third covenant is Moses. Yep. And fourth covenant is David. The covenant with David. And we said that every covenant, it's initiated by God. God initiates the covenant first. He's the one who speaks out to the people first. Every covenant also has a response. God initiates, but there needs to be a response back from the person or from the people. Last week, I'm just going to go into my notes. Last week we talked about the covenant with Noah. Okay? And we said that the covenant with Noah is a universal covenant. It's a covenant that applies to everybody, all of humanity, all of creation. Can you actually, where's the tablet? Yeah, the tablet real quick. We'll protect the Bible references. Okay, the first covenant was the covenant with Noah. When God tells Noah what? Because my phone, as you all know, cannot open Bible apps. Yes, I do. You can go to Genesis chapter 6, verse 18. Hold on, that's for the live stream. Go ahead, AJ.
And it says, "But I will establish my covenant with you, and you shall go into the ark, you, your sons, your wife, and your sons' wives with you. And of every living thing of all flesh you shall bring 2 of every sort into the ark, to keep them alive with you. They shall be male and female. Of the birds after their kind, of animals after their kind, and of every creeping thing of the earth after its kind, 2 of every kind will come to you, and to keep them alive. And you shall take for yourself all food that is eaten, and you shall gather it to yourself, and it shall be food for you and for them."
So, actually, get here. This one, I'll get the other one. Okay, so we said the first covenant was the covenant with Noah, and it's a universal covenant. You guys have to map this out because we said last Friday, last Friday we actually had a lot of elementary school teachers here. And it was useful because the story of Noah is one of those famous stories that we share in elementary school. When we say the story of Noah, if the whole point of the story is just to talk about an ark, and this is true in fellowship and this is true in middle school, if the whole story is just to talk about an ark and a flood and a family and the animals and everyone looks so pretty and everyone looks happy, then you've completely lost the whole point of the story. And the kids walk out saying, why did I bother learning this story in Sunday school? It means no value to them. And when they get older, it's remembered as a story, but it has no real significance other than just a myth or a legend. But it has to be always, this is what we talked about, it has to always be talked about, oh, one of them's here. All right. We were just talking about your comment from last Friday. Mm-hmm. There has to be some connection back to Christ. What was the whole point of the Noah covenant with God? The whole point was first to set the stage, to set the foundation, to say first, oh, don't be shy. You. Talking to you. Yeah. Hello. And you. Hello. The first covenant was to set the stage. It says first that God has a purpose and a plan to preserve life. Every covenant after that is going to take it more and more specific with more and more detail to talk about what is God's plan exactly to save life and what does he mean to save life. But the very first covenant is the covenant with Noah. Hi guys. Very first second comes all the way from Charlotte. I can feel the Charlotte wind. Freddy comes from Raleigh. I can feel the Raleigh wind. I like the shirt.
I got a stain.
Yeah, I see. That's what happens when you wear white. So the covenant with Noah is just to say, I have a plan to preserve life on all of humanity. So God says what to Noah? I will establish my covenant with you, and you shall go into the ark, you, your wife, your sons, and your sons' wives, and every living thing of all flesh you shall bring two, of every sort, into the ark. When we share this with the kids in Sunday school, it's really important that we explain to them there's a purpose to the creation in the world that's around us. God intended a purpose for it, and our job is to preserve it with God. God wants life to be preserved, as he said with Noah. All of life, not just human life, not American life, not German life, not Egyptian life, all of life, not just humans, animals, birds, fish, all of life to be preserved as best as possible. So we start to get that in the imagination of the kids, that every life is sacred. Not like Pocahontas. You've seen Pocahontas? Or something goes too far. You know, the rock has a spirit. Every rock, nobody remembers it? Every rock, every tree, every way. Something like that. No, we don't believe in pantheism. We don't believe that everything has a spirit, but we believe everything that God created is sacred. So we talked about Noah last week with a lot of the younger servants, the elementary school servants. Now we're going to talk about the covenant with Abraham. So if we're going to go talk about Abraham, we're going to go to Genesis chapter 12. Because it starts with, there's a covenant with Noah regarding all of the universe, all of creation, to preserve all of life. But then we're going to get more specific hundreds of years later with Abraham. We're going to go to Abraham, Genesis chapter 12, verse 1 through 3. This is when God first calls Abraham. He says, Now the Lord had said to Abram, Get out of your country, from your family, and from your father's house, to a land that I will show you. Look at what he's going to say. I will make you a great nation. 1. I will bless you and make your name great, and you shall be a blessing. I will bless those who bless you, and I will curse him who curses you. And in you all the families of the earth shall be blessed. What's the scope here of the covenant? With Noah, the scope of the covenant was all of living creatures. With Abraham, it's more specific. It's not all of living creatures, but it's what now? Every humans, all the nations. Which nations? All of them. Every nation, every family, every person, every human being that walks on the earth. How are they going to be blessed? Through you, Abraham. How is that going to happen? Remember, we're always going to connect it back to Christ. How is that going to happen? He's going to give him a son, and his son will give him a grandson, great-grandson, great-great-grandson, until they reach Christ, right? And Christ is going to be the salvation of the world, right? But Christ is, the Father is not sharing this much with him yet. He's saying, I'm going to bless all the nations, the Egyptians, the Arabs, the Hittites, the Moabites, the Ammonites, everybody, Canaanites. Everyone will be blessed through, even your enemies will be blessed by you. And if they curse you, they will be cursed in return. What's the point, you think, of God's covenant with Abraham? We said with Noah, the scope was any living creature. Because the point was to teach Noah, all of life is sacred. All of it should be preserved, not destroyed. Right? As we should teach the kids in Sunday school. Now with Abraham, what's the point of saying, I will bless all the nations through you? Imagine, Sheher, if I come to you, say, Sheher, all the nations of the earth will be blessed through you. Intabab. Okay, what do you think? Yeah.
Can we go back just a little bit?
Yeah.
This thought just came right. So
Can you use the mic?
we said that the first covenant.
God wanted to tell Noah that all life is sacred, right? So that's kind of hard to say because what happened? He destroyed all the human beings and destroyed the planet and the animals, and then he kept just a few, right?
Sure.
He kept a few of everything.
So
So how can we say that all life was sacred if he only kept the
Sure.
yeah.
So that's a very good question, and you'll get that you're gonna get that in middle school or high school or elementary school. Well, then why did he kill everybody if all life is sacred? There's two ways to look at the flood. The first way is to say it killed everybody. The second way is to say what? What do you think? It saved the righteous. Yeah. Rather than kill everybody and the righteous, it saved the righteous, and to save the righteous, it had to wash the earth. It destroyed. It was. It destroyed the earth. It baptized the earth all over again. It's not believed that it was the whole earth. It was believed it was the world as they know it, and that's like the Mediterranean world and Asia Minor and so on, where Armenia and Turkey, Greece and Italy and Egypt and all that whole area. The reasoning for God to do this was he had seen the world, he had seen the people in it, and he said the people are corrupting and perverting all of creation. Men and women, women and women, men and men, dogs and humans, humans and humans, dogs and dogs. It was all messy. And it says in Genesis, in the same chapter actually, right, before the flood, God says he looked into the earth. Well, we can read it actually. Since you brought it up, we can read it together. It's worth pausing, because that is a question you get in Sunday school if you're trying to teach this. Very good question. Okay, let's just read it from the top. There's a lot of stuff in there. We've talked about it in Bible studies on Saturday nights, so we're not going to pause, but focus on what we're going to look for. I'll tell you what it is. Now it came to pass when men began to multiply on the face of the earth, and daughters were born to them, that the sons of God, we talked about this, what is the sons of God? Saw the daughters of men, what does that mean? That they were beautiful, and they took wives for themselves of all whom they chose. That has a meaning. We're just not going to be able to talk about it right now. And the Lord said, My spirit shall not strive with man forever, for he is indeed flesh, yet his days shall be 120. There were giants on the earth in those days, and also afterwards when the sons of God came into the daughters of men, and they bore children to them. Those were the mighty men who were of old, men of renown. Look at this. Then the Lord said, focus on this part, then the Lord saw that the wickedness of man was great in the earth, and that every intent of the thoughts of his heart was only evil continually. What does that mean? God judges, and he looks, and he says, wickedness has become so extreme that every intention, every motivation, every thought in their heart is what? Evil continually, consistently, without any breaks. There is no goodness left in the hearts of humans, except for Noah and his family. So what does he do? The Lord was sorry that he made man. Some people say that means he regretted. No, he's not regretting. He's grieving. What does it mean to grieve? To be sad. Sorry. That's really what it is. Sorry does not have to mean that I regretted this. God does not regret his actions. But he sees the reality, and he is sad at what humanity is doing. He has to leave them to do what they want to do. But he is sad, sorry over them. He was grieved in his heart. So the Lord said, I will destroy man whom I have created from the face of the earth, both man and beast, creeping thing and birds of the air, for I am sorry that I have made them. But Noah found grace in the eyes of the Lord. If I start the story in the context, and if I share the context of the whole story of the flood, then the flood is not about destroying the earth. The flood is about what? Saving the earth. Saving the earth from the people who every intention and every thought was wickedness, evil, always. How is he going to save it? Through the one family that is found grace in God's eyes.
You can't say you got regretted because he did say no.
And it's not regretting, it's sorrowful. Sorry means I'm sorrowful. Not sorry means I regret. Because in our language in America, when a child does something wrong, we say you're sorry, and the child says, sorry, mommy, I won't do it again. That's not what God means here. Sorry comes from sorrow. I have sorrow, sadness in my heart from what I'm seeing. Okay? Does that make sense? So we would explain it to them as God's purpose in the covenant was to preserve life. How is he going to preserve life when there is so much wickedness and evil? So what does he have to do? He has to isolate, quarantine, whatever you want to do, call for Noah. We're going to talk about the virus. We don't have to talk about it now. We were just talking about that a few minutes ago. You should. Is that a medical opinion? What you told me about the coronavirus a few minutes ago? We'll share it after. It has nothing to do with this. It just. So let's go back. Let's talk about Abraham again. Okay. So in Abraham, Genesis chapter 12. I'm in chapter 12. God calls Abraham out of his country, and what does he say to him? He says, I will make you a great nation. I will bless everyone who blesses you. So God's purpose there is to bless all of humanity. Right? Very good. What is he going to promise Abraham, just from our memory? What are the 3 promises that he makes to Abraham? Very simple. 1, first promise to Abraham. A lot of kids, right? That means that he's going to have not just many, many kids. He's actually going to have what? 2 kids, 2 boys, right? But grandkids, great-grandkids, lots of, what we call that is posterity. We call that a descendants. Long line of descendants, okay? They're not all going to enjoy the blessing. Is Abraham going to enjoy the promised land? No, he's a wanderer. But he's living in the land that he's going to inherit, but they're not going to inherit it yet, okay? But they're going to have many, many kids who are going to inherit it later. Their great kids and the great-grandkids and so on. What's the second thing? I think this one will be a little bit better. Yep, there'll be blessing, right? Watch this. Genesis will... We're not going to be able to do all this. Look what God says to Abraham in Genesis 15. A couple of chapters later, he says, do not be afraid, Abraham. I am your shield, your exceedingly great reward. What is he saying? I am your shield, your exceedingly great reward. What does that mean? I am your protector. And what's the other thing? I'll protect you from harm. I'll protect you from evil. And what's the other thing?
Do not be afraid. Don't fear.
Yep. I am your shield, your protector. I will protect you. I will take all the harm instead of you taking it. And what's the other thing? Your exceedingly great reward. What's the great reward? No, he says, I am your exceedingly great reward. What is that going to mean? I am your protection, and I am your exceedingly great reward. What do you think that's going to mean? Because remember, everything we talk about with the covenants, if you're just talking to the kids about Abraham, you just tell them he heard a voice. Okay, that's a nice story, but what does it have to do with their faith? You connect it back to Christ. What does he mean? What does God mean when he says, do not be afraid, Abraham, I am your shield, your exceedingly great reward? What does he mean by that? Christ is what? There will come someone who's what? Going to be your shield. What does it mean to be a shield? Protector, not just protector, but what does that mean? To be your shield. You have to use your imagination. What does it mean? Not just guard you. What happens to the shield?
Nothing can get through, essentially.
What happens to the shield?
It gets,
You clearly haven't fought with a sword and shield before. It gets beat up.
Yeah, it gets bad.
It gets the one that it takes all the blows. He says, I am your shield. He's not saying, I will put a shield. He says, I am going to be the shield that's going to be around you. I will take all the blows. I will take all the pains. I will take all the death that's aimed at you, right? And then what's the other thing? Your exceedingly great reward. I am it. Not the land, not the kids, but I am your exceedingly great. What does that remind us? Remember, connected to Christ. What does he mean? It means literally you will get to eat me. You'll get to drink me. I will be in you. I am your reward. I am me. I'm not going to give you a reward. I am the reward. You're going to have a share in me. You're going to abide in me, and I will abide in you. I am your shield, and I am your exceedingly great reward. So the first thing he promises him is many, many kids, great kids, great-grandkids. Second thing he promises him a relationship where God himself is going to protect, be the shield of Abraham, and be the reward of Abraham. It's a beautiful relationship to have with anybody, right? Your spouse or your family member, your father or your mother, they're your shield. They're also your reward, that you get to have a father or a mother. And then the land is the third thing, right? He says, you see the land that you're wandering in? You will inherit it. Even though it belongs to Canaanites and they have soldiers and weapons, it's going to be your land, right? You shall dwell in the land that you're wandering. Now, what does Abraham have to do to respond, to accept the covenant? This is going to be the part that carries us because we're going to have to stop. And what is Abraham going to have to do? Okay, well, he was chosen because he was faithful. And we're going to talk about that in a minute. He was chosen, and you hear it over and over again. God says what to Abraham? Walk in my ways. As long as you walk in my ways, because you have walked in my ways, walk in my ways, do as I tell you. What is God saying to Abraham? As long as you're on my path and you follow my commandments, because you are the one man who is walking in my ways, who is righteous, just like Noah. You're righteous in my eyes, I'm making this covenant with you. So he's already done that. To walk in his ways, and then, but what does Abraham have to do? It's physical. God commands him to do something. I can keep showing you the passages, but we're not going to make it through the time. Something very physical. God says, you want to be in the covenant with me? These are the three conditions. These are the three benefits of the covenant. But here's what you have to do. You and your sons and every man born in your household, you should do what? Circumcise. Very good. What does it mean? What does this deal with? Why does God want Abraham to circumcise? To mark themselves, to brand themselves. Well, nobody's going to see it. What's the point of the marking? No, it was meant to be so even back then, circumcision was understood to be a cleansing, a cleaning, right? It was the foreskin is known as extra skin and causes infections or causes all sorts of things, and that was known. But not everybody used to remove it. What is God trying to say when he says circumcise? He wants them physically to be circumcised, but what does Moses say to them later? It says Moses, because we're going to talk about Moses in a couple of minutes. It says, Moses says to Israel, he says, circumcise your what? Hearts. Okay? And Moses is the one who wrote the law about circumcision. But he says circumcise your bodies, but before that he says circumcise your hearts. What does it mean to be circumcised? Man or woman? What does it mean to be circumcised? To be completely consecrated and committed to God. Entirely. Nothing left. He owns you. He owns you to the flesh, to the most private area. To be committed 100% completely to God. That's what he means by circumcision. It's the circumcision of the flesh of your body, consecrate your body, but also consecrate your heart. What does that mean? To be committed to yourself, to God 100%. To teach your children to be committed to God 100%. To walk before the Lord all the days of your life. Right? You hear that often in the law of Moses and in Abraham. To walk before the Lord. The way of the Lord and righteousness and justice. You guys hear those terms a lot? Righteousness and justice, the way of the Lord, righteousness. We hear that all throughout Genesis, all throughout Exodus, all throughout Leviticus, all throughout Deuteronomy, and Numbers. Those two things, righteousness, to live in righteousness and justice, and to walk in the way of the Lord all the days of my life. What are those two things? What's significant about those two things? To walk in the way of the Lord in the time of Abraham and in the time of Moses is what? To be consecrated to God is to have what? One God. Not pagans, not idols, but to have one God and to walk in His way, only His way. That's why the first 4 commandments are all about, I am the Lord your God, you shall have no other God before me. Right? You shall make no idols. Remember the Sabbath. Keep my name, do not use my name in vain. Right? Walk the way of the Lord means to be committed 100%, consecrated, circumcised 100% to God. And what is this righteousness and justice? What's that more about? Your relationship to the people around you. To deal with others correctly, rightly, and justly, fairly. Right? It says righteousness and justice. Teach your kids these things, and that's how you are circumcised. Moses is going to take this with a new covenant. Abraham received the covenant to bless all the nations. But when Moses receives the covenant, what is Moses going to hear? We can do it together. We can go to Exodus 19. You can look on the screen even. What's Moses going to hear? It's no longer, I will make you a blessing to all nations, but there's something very important that's different. And Moses went up to God, and the Lord called to him from the mountain, saying, thus you shall say to the house of who? Jacob, right? And tell the children of Israel. So he's talking just about the people, the descendants of Abraham. He's not mentioning all the nations now, right? What's going on here? He says, you have seen what I did to the Egyptians and how I bore you on eagle's wings and brought you to myself. Now therefore, here's the covenant. Here's God starting it, and he's telling the conditions. If you will indeed obey my voice, keep my covenant, then you shall be what? A special treasure to me above all people. For all the earth is mine, and you shall be to me a kingdom of priests and a holy nation. These are the words which you shall speak to the children of Israel. What does God mean by that? He's talking to all the people. He tells Moses, go tell all the children of Israel. This is specific to who? The scope of this covenant is not the whole creation, all living creatures. It's not all the humans, but now he's even more narrow to who? The children of Israel. Okay? The children, descendants of Abraham. And he says to them what? If you keep my covenant, if you obey my voice and keep my covenant, then you shall be a special treasure to me above all people. You are going to be special above all people. For all the earth is mine, and you shall be to me a kingdom of priests and a holy nation. What does that mean? A kingdom of priests and a holy nation. Connected to what we've been talking about circumcising. A kingdom of priests and a holy nation. What does it mean to be a holy nation? What does holy mean? Consecrated, set apart, right? So we've already talked about that. The consecration part, the circumcision part is to what? To commit them 100% to God, to make them loyal 100% to God, body and heart. Be a holy nation just for God, right?
So they're like ordained.
Yes, exactly. Ordained, like selected, appointed as my special people. Okay? But then he says, a kingdom of priests. Because the Protestants, they go back to this verse, and they go to St. Peter when he talks about this verse, and the Protestants say, great, everybody's a priest. Everyone can baptize. Everyone can give confessions. Everyone can anoint the sick. Everyone, and then there's no communion, there's no sacraments, because everyone is a priest. That's not what he's saying. He's speaking directly to the children of Israel, and he's saying to them, you'll be to me a kingdom of priests. What did the priests do in Egypt? Because they're from Egypt, right? The Israelites had just come out of Egypt right after this. This is the point right after they come out of Egypt. What did they used to do in Egypt? The priests in Egypt. What was their job? What was the whole point of the priests in Egypt? No, it wasn't actually. It wasn't actually about advising the king. Yeah, they worshipped idols, so what were they doing? Making sacrifices to who? The gods, right? They didn't think of them as idols, they thought of them as gods, right? The god of the Nile River. If the people are thirsty or the crops are dying and the people are not able to grow their crops, they go to the priests, and the Pharaoh says, priests offer sacrifices to the Nile god. They offer sacrifices to the Nile. If there's locusts or there's frogs, they go to the gods of the frogs, and the priests offer sacrifices to the god of the frogs, the god of the locusts, the god of the sun, the god of the wind, the god and so on, right? What was the point of the priests? To mediate. They're the middlemen. They speak on behalf of the people to the gods, and God in turn, supposed to be, in Pharaoh, speaks to the people through the priests. And that's when the priests go back to the Pharaoh and then give him advice at that point. So Pharaoh says, I don't know what to do about this. Priests offer a sacrifice to Ra, ask him for help. They go, they offer their sacrifice to Ra, they come back and they say, Ra says, build yourself another pyramid, okay? And then that's what they do. So what were the priests? Mediators. What's the point of this? Why would we even teach this to the kids in Sunday school? Why am I even bothering to go over it here? Why is God telling the Israelites they're going to be a kingdom of priests? They're a holy nation because they're consecrated to God, only the true God, and the kingdom of priests. Something about it. They're going to be a kingdom of mediators. Mediators to the whole world. So the whole world is still part of the plan. But now God is focusing, and he's going to give laws, 1 billion different laws to Moses to give to these people and to their priests, and say, you have your own priests, but all of you are priests to the whole world, to mediate. Through you, the whole world will come to know me. And through you, I will speak to the whole world. Fulfilling the prophecy he gave, the covenant he told to Abraham. All the nations of the earth will be blessed through you and your descendants. How? Well, God is going to take Noah, he promises him all creation, preserve all of creation. All life is sacred. Then to Abraham, he says, okay, your family, all your descendants are sacred, okay? But I'm going to bless all the world through your descendants. Okay, everyone will be blessed. And then to Moses, he says, okay, you specifically, this is exactly how we're going to bless the world. You have to keep my covenant and do those laws about purification, offering sacrifices, keeping yourself undefiled and clean and holy and so on, and follow my commandments, when you do that, you are going to be my mediators to the whole world, so the whole world may come to know me through you. This is why you get into Christ's mind in the time of him in the temple, and he's speaking to the Pharisees, and the Pharisees are hypocrites, and the Pharisees don't even pray, or they just make a public show about it, or they spend money, or they go into parties, and he says, and Christ loses his temper, of course. He gets very angry with them, or he gives up his temper. He gets very angry with them. And he says, brood of vipers, you snakes, you children of snakes, you're supposed to be the mediators to the whole world for me. The whole world is supposed to get to know me through all of you. But now you've deprived the whole world of access to me because you are not following your commandments. He says the same thing to us, Christians. We have a mission. This is the mission. We're supposed to be mediators to the whole world for him. And if we don't keep up our end of the covenant, we deprive him of being able to reach the whole world. This is why Christ, when he was born, he had to go through circumcision. He had to go through being, his mother had to offer something in the temple. He had to be baptized like everyone else. What did he have to do? He had to fulfill every single commandment of God. Why? Because he was going to be the perfect, mediator. Or we call St. Paul calls him the great high priest. The perfect priest to represent all the world to God, and for God to communicate to all the world through him. Christ is the perfect high priest, the perfect mediator. And the priests today that are ordained today should be a reflection, although we are weak, and myself the weakest, we should be a reflection of this. That Christ is trying, and the Father is trying to communicate to the church through the priesthood, and then the church is the way that God communicates to the world. When we say, go in peace, the peace of the Lord be with you, why am I sending you away? Why do we say, go in peace, the peace of the Lord be with you? The Eastern Orthodox Church, they have a very clear understanding of this, because you have a mission. Go and bring the peace to the rest of the world. Go bring the message to the rest of the world. Go bring love. Go bring hope. Go be the peacemakers. Go be the sons of God, right? In your actions and so on. I think it's after 8 o'clock, so we have to stop. Here's a small note to note about this. Last connection to make. When Christ, this is a very rich topic, and I wish we had more time, so maybe we can do it over fellowship or Bible study on Saturday night. Why do you think now God says to them, Christ says to them, what is the greatest commandment? And the priests say what? To love the Lord your God with all your heart, all your soul, all your might, and to love your neighbor as yourself. Why do you think the 10 commandments, there's 4 of them all about God, and 6 of them all about my relationship with everyone else? Honor your mother and father, that's other people. Do not murder other people. Do not commit adultery. Do not steal from other people. Do not commit adultery with other people, of course. Do not lie to other people. Do not be jealous to other people. Why has everything that God has done from Abraham through Moses to Christ and the commandments and everything, taking on these 2 dimensions? Love your God with all your heart, all your soul, all your strength. Love your neighbor as yourself. This is what he says. On these 2 commandments, the whole law stands. This is the summary of everything God's trying to accomplish. Everything God tried to accomplish from Noah until, even from Adam, but from Noah until Christ, is to teach the world how to love your Lord your God with all your heart and to love your neighbor as yourself. It's the complete covenant. It's the complete fulfillment, the complete full picture of it all. Let's stop here, because there's a lot more to say, but we're not going to be able to get to it. Glory be to God forever. Let's say our Father, and then I think we have to go to fellowship downstairs. Finally, Lord, make us worthy to pray thankfully, our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name, thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us, and lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. Christ Jesus our Lord. The love of God the Father, the grace of his only begotten Son, our Lord God and Savior Jesus Christ, communion and gift of the Holy Spirit be with you. Go in peace. The peace of the Lord be with you. All right.